This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
In these turbulent times, let us not erode the liberties our country was built on.
Let it shine.
Hello, I'm Bill Reagan, and you're watching Fayetteville Public Television.
Hi, with us today is Mendy Knott. Mendy has written a play for men only.
Called Men Only.
And it's, I guess it's about, on the surface, it's about a fishing tournament.
Yes.
Which, a lot of people say, a play about fishing. So, I guess it's not really about fishing, it's about things other than fishing too, though, isn't it?
It's about the characters who are going fishing more than anything else.
Right. So what can you tell me about the play itself?
Well, the play, essentially, my attempt is to bring a community together of great diversity.
Right.
And it takes place in the mountains on a little lake. And it is essentially about the friendship of 5 women who also love their community and love their town and love to fish. And they use the fishing in order to actually help a little boy in the town get treatment, and they need the money from the contest to donate to him. And in order to do it, it's a men-only tournament. They have to dress in drag for 2 days and pass as men to enter the contest. But they know the lake, they feel like they can win, and the only thing they have to do is pass as men for a few days. And how hard can that be for, as I say, 5 butch lesbians?
Now, you like fishing too.
I love to fish.
Okay.
Been fishing all my life.
You were taking part in any tournaments, or?
No, I have not. I just do it for fun. But I studied up on the tournaments, and I've watched some of the tournaments, and I know a little bit about them, and I love to go into the big bass stores and kind of talk to people. And I'm actually more of a fly fisher now.
Okay.
But since I came to Arkansas from North Carolina, I do more just general bass fishing.
Are these, now you have, I mean, all your characters seem to cover the broad spectrum of humanity, though.
Yes, they do. Because they live in a small town. And I've set the town in a little town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And several of these women were born there. They're part of the community. They've been part of the community all their lives. But there's all the way from conservative Christian churches and kind of a fundamentalist feelings to a very acceptance of everyone in the town. And in the end of the film, all the town pulls together to help them win because, if for no other reason, they love the kid. They love the little boy who needs the treatment. So
now we say film because originally this was written as a screenplay, wasn't it?
Yes, it is. It was written as a screenplay. It is my first screenplay.
And not only that, but it won an award.
It did. It won second place in the 1 in 10 screenplay contest, which is an international contest. They accept only 300 plays, and then they narrow it down to 25, and then they narrow it down to 3, and I won second place. And so that's not so bad for your first screenplay.
So is this a yearly contest?
It is. Happens every year. They're now accepting submissions, and they've actually expanded it to 400 now.
Wow, okay.
Because so many people are showing interest in what's being written, it's a pretty good niche area for films now, the gay screenplays, because there are so many viewers who want that material and want to see their lives on stage. And I think, especially, I don't know, you see things like the L word, which is a very popular. I actually make fun of it in the screenplay a little bit. I'll poke a few jabs at it, but it's not. It's great that it's lesbian, but it's not really about your life. If you can imagine, you have to have a lot of money to be in the L word. Just about. You have
a lot of money to be any TV character.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not really about my life, and nor the lives of my friends.
Right. So, how'd you feel when you found out that you'd win the second prize?
Well,
was there any living with you?
What?
Was there any living with you? I mean, could your friends stand you for a while after you won?
Well, it's very funny. You put things out there all your life. I've been writing for 15 years, very hard at it, and you just put things out there. You get lots of rejections. You get some acceptances, and they become, they're not just a huge deal. But when I got the 25, I got the list of 25, and when I made the list of 25, I was absolutely thrilled.
Yeah.
I felt like I had won,
yeah.
And that was good for me. It was my first screenplay. I never expected to do so well. And so then when I got the second place thing, I really, the only thing that I did was I sent out lots of emails. I sent the winners thing to everybody I knew, essentially, and said, And of course, it's interesting because my dad wanted to read it. I'm really not ready for him to read it. And then everybody wanted to read it, and I would say, well, it's a niche screenplay. It's a très gay, and I don't know if you really know what you're getting into if you but I might let him read it yet.
Your dad's aware.
He is. He's changed a lot because he didn't really. I kind of got kicked out of my house. The usual. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was much harder, I think, still to come out.
When did you come out?
It was 1973, 74.
Okay.
So, and especially from a minister's household.
Yeah, because your father's a Presbyterian minister?
Yes. And, but over time, there's a friend of mine who says that half of winning is showing up.
Yeah.
And I just continue to show up. There was a period of time where I fell off the deep end myself. I mean, the whole thing was a huge ordeal, dealing with religion, dealing with my feelings of guilt, dealing with being a lesbian in a straight world. I was quite the alcoholic for a long time and pulled myself together. It was after my Air Force years.
Right.
Might as well stay one while you're in there, I guess.
Yeah.
Everybody is kind of drinking it up, and So, and when I did that, I actually got sober long enough to join the police department because I really wasn't quite ready to give up my adrenaline rush. And then at the end of my policing years, I started writing. And when I started writing, I realized that none of this was right for me. That writing was right for me, and I quit policing and immediately wrote a novel, actually.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Was it, so you're having a reading this month?
Yes,
of
a
the entire
staged reading.
Okay.
Which it's difficult. It was more difficult than I thought to take a screenplay and kind of turn it to a play or even a staged reading.
Yeah.
Because a screenplay is so visual, absolutely so visual.
Right.
And the play has, of necessity, won't have all that scenery and all that stuff, and they need a little more dialogue between them. So I'm working with a friend, Margaret Britton, and I are bringing this up, she's the director and has worked in plays for a long time. And she's really bringing out this. I changed some of the script, and we have a narrator who will be me, since I know the play backwards and forwards and nobody else does. So I'll be like a storyteller who comes and sets each scene, and then the characters will come on and do the dialogue.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So when will this public reading be?
The reading is March 27th and 28th. It's at the corner of Archibald Yeld and, well, what do you call that huge corner? It's the Arc right there. But you will see a large banner that says Goddess Festival on it. And that is the building where the play will be. And it's at 8 o'clock on March 27th, which is a Friday, and March 28th, which is a Saturday.
Are y'all going to videotape this?
Yes, I think we will.
Because y'all should videotape this.
Yeah, we definitely should.
And show it on Cat.
Oh, well, that would be really fun.
Yes, you
Why
should do
not?
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Why not? Because who knows? You never are, you're certainly not guaranteed to get your film produced.
Right.
And you hope that it gets optioned even, you know, I
Yeah.
don't know if that'll happen. But, you know, I've done what I set out to do was to be true to myself and send. I actually looked for a gay screenplay something because
Yeah.
I did not know where to send one if I wrote one, but I
Right.
was determined to write one and be true to being gay. It's really difficult because a lot of the times I'll straighten things up, I'll make them a little different, I'll make them more general so that I can get published. So
When you
that
say
I can,
when you say you'll straighten things up, you mean make it more hetero or what?
yes, well, more
Okay.
anonymous at
Okay.
least, okay, so that it would go either way. I do a lot of songwriting, and so those songs, I try to make those songs quite often go either way. They could be construed in any kind of way,
Okay.
or I just leave out the pronouns entirely, you know, and I didn't want to do that with this play.
Okay.
I really wanted it to be as out there as I felt.
What about auditioning people? What's the process like auditioning? Is it something? Do you get to do it, or does the director get to do it? Because you wrote the play, so is this something like? Are they going to let you anywhere near the auditioning process, or are you going to be like this crabby person going, no, that person's just not right?
You mean for like the screenplay?
For your reading.
For the reading, we already auditioned, and
Okay.
I was with my director. We
Okay.
did it together, and we're very agreeable. We work
Okay.
well together. And really, I don't know, I think we took everybody who came because it's a cast of thousands, is all I can say.
You've
It's
got
like my
you
life.
have quite a few people, don't you?
Yes. And so we had like 14 people come. I think we took them all for one reason or another. I think one person is going to stage manage. And the rest are actually, I think, in the play. I don't think we turned anybody down.
Wow, okay.
So, and it was very hilarious, though, because you got to plug everybody in different things. Where are they best suited? Who they're going to be? What are they going to do? It was a kind of, madhouse.
Now, when you say it's a reading, does this mean they have to memorize their lines, or do they read from a script?
They can read from their script.
Okay.
But we are both asking that they be very, very familiar with the script, but they can read.
So you'll have rehearsals and practices?
Yes, we will. We'll have like 5 or 6 rehearsals.
Okay. That should be fun to watch for anybody.
Yes, I think so. I think it's going to be really fun, and we're going to try to involve the audience,
Yeah.
which is also a little bit different because I have a crowd scenes, and so
Wow,
I'm going to
okay,
let
yeah.
them be the crowd. I'm going to tell them what to do,
Okay.
and I think everybody's going to enjoy taking part in it.
One of the issues you deal with in your play is abuse.
Yes.
Was that difficult to write, or?
Well, no, because I think I have enough friends
Yeah.
who've dealt with, especially abuse from their fathers.
Right.
It felt tough, but it was really interesting because I tended to overdo it, and my partner is a really good editor.
Yeah.
She's the one who goes cut all the time,
Yeah.
and she said you can show this in fewer lines. You don't need to have all that in there. You really, and you will portray that this guy is being abusive, emotionally abusive to his daughter. And then also the part about rape in the military, which was very real to me.
Right.
And I was quite familiar with that, too familiar with that. And I felt like I wanted that to be a part too. I really wanted to show these women's lives with all the aspects that they go through that makes them kind of tough enough to act like men for a couple of days.
A lot of
in a
people
way.
don't know about the issue of rape in the military.
Well, they should by now because it keeps coming
I just
forward,
read- I
keeps
just-
coming forward.
I just read an
you know.
article in I think in Ms. Magazine, maybe a few months old now, about in fact the rising incidence of rape in
Right.
the military. Yeah.
Because they no longer, for one thing, they don't separate the women and the men. Dorms are mixed, and for the most part, I think dorms are mixed. And when you are overseas, certainly fighting in a war, you are all together.
Right.
And it is extremely important that this is addressed, because if a woman has joined the military to be a soldier, she does not need to protect herself from enemies next to her.
Right.
She needs to be able to focus on the enemy out there or whatever it is that they're doing, her mission, as opposed to protecting herself all the time from the people she's supposed to be working with.
It gives new meaning to the phrase enemies, domestic and foreign.
Yes, it does,
Yeah.
truly. Thank you. That's an excellent way to say it.
Performance poetry, you've done quite a bit of that, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
So I want to ask you this about your play. Does your experience doing performance poetry, does that influence your playwriting? Did that help you with playwriting?
It's a very interesting thing about poetry and playwriting. I took a class with Bob Ford. You probably know who Bob is. He's a great guy. And when I first came here, I was already interested in screenwriting because a friend of mine was doing it. And he said in his class, I was kind of taken aback by this, that screenplay writing is much more like poetry than prose. And I was like, what does he mean by that? But now, after working on a screenplay, I absolutely see what he means. You have to compress, use the exact right words, because they're not going to give you much time to say what you have to say.
Right.
And so it's a very poetic form. And so I found that actually just writing poetry for 15 years really helped me write the play.
Yeah.
It helped me keep it punchy and short, say what I mean, don't be messing around with long, winding sentences. You have to really put it out there. And certainly just being on stage, I have an idea of how to express yourself and how to put it out there. I mean, I think the performance poetry will come into play as Margaret and I work on directing it, trying to bring that out in other people.
What's beautiful in a book isn't always beautiful when it's filmed.
Right.
When
That's
coming out
true.
of a character's mouth. Classic example is Ray Bradbury.
Yes.
It's beautiful to read Ray Bradbury stuff, but when they did a Ray Bradbury series back in the 80s, putting those same sentences in the words of actors who weren't always up to the task was just excruciating to watch.
I keep waiting for a really good illustrated man to happen.
Well, supposedly they're making one.
Well, good.
I don't know if they're making a really good illustrated man, but supposedly they're remaking
Because
it.
I've seen it a couple of times in different
Yeah.
forms, and it has never has been as effective as the book.
Yeah.
And I love that story.
Yeah.
And Something Wicked as well. That's another great
Yeah.
short story that has not yet been
Yeah.
able. You cannot capture him. He is
No.
hard. He's very difficult to capture.
Yeah. But he's just a master of the language. And
Yes, he is.
It's almost impossible to capture that on film without sounding really pretentious.
Right.
They don't sound like real people.
Right. And I think that is the liberality of a book. You
Yeah.
know, you really can build and build and build, and the conversations can go on. And in a play, you have a lot more dialogue.
Right.
I would say real play, stage plays, and prose have more in common.
Yeah. Your first book, which you wrote after you were a police officer.
Right.
What was that about?
That was my healing book.
Okay.
After being a cop and in the Air Force for all that time.
You had a lot to deal with.
Yes, I did. I had a whole lot. And what I did was I wrote this fictional book written as after the kind of, Holocaust has happened and everything is broken down back into tribes.
Right.
And there's these Amazonian tribes that, they are very tough. I mean, in the book, they ride horses, they kill men, they are like, there's lots of sex and gore in it, actually. And I think it was great for me. I came through, finished the book. I actually got a couple of bites from publishers, and but I actually had a bad experience with a publisher at that time, and I put the book down. I've never picked it back up again.
Really?
But it was, no matter what I ever do with that novel, Amazon Adventures for the Stout-Hearted Lesbian, it's very...
Do you ever let people read it now, or what?
Yes, I do. I let people read it.
You can always self-publish it.
Yeah, and I may do. I mean, I work for a little press now.
That's right.
And may eventually do that. But it does need rewriting because it was the first thing. I mean, I didn't write a poem or a song or anything. I picked up and wrote a novel.
Yeah.
And when I got done, it is the most healing one thing that I have ever done for myself in my life. And I'm going to start teaching a class for teenagers, which is kind of where I started off on the wrong path. And they're homeschool kids, and I'm going to be teaching them about creative writing. And I think it can save lives. That's what I feel like, and I think it saved mine. And in many ways, more ways than one. And I have never quit since I began.
Good. About writing, was it hard for you to get into each character's head as you were writing for them?
It was a little difficult. I based them on some friends of mine, so that made it a little easier. But I also find that there is some trickiness to that because you may not describe them as well as they need to be. And one of the comments from the director who went over the play, which were mostly really great, I was very touched by his response, but was that they need more individual characters, because otherwise they can kind of blend into one. And so I went back in and tried to bring out some of those in my rewrite. So that's the hardest thing, really, is to make them real clear that they're individuals. Each one is different. Each one has a different take on something. And that's harder in a screenplay, too, because you do have a book. You have more time to develop that character.
And you don't. And in a book, you can say things without getting into dialogue. Right.
Yeah, you can have that omniscient kind of perspective.
What about the father, the abusive father? Was it how about getting into his head?
Well, you know, it was interesting to do Gil's father, Ed, because I have known guys like this, for one thing.
Haven't we all?
Yes, yes, I think so. And maybe he is a little more of a caricature. I mean, I allowed that for him, because I could make him kind of a caricature, which I did, because it is a fishing play. It is a romantic comedy. It is supposed to be funny. And so he could have these kind of comic aspects. The most serious thing is between the two of them when she does the little flashback fantasy thing about him. That's the most serious you really get a hold of him. Otherwise, he's kind of this kind of evil, comic evil. Guy, you know.
So how long does it run, do you think?
Well, you figure a minute a page.
Right.
And so it's not 120 pages anymore. I really shortened it down, and he advised me to do that as well. And so I think the stage reading will run about 90 minutes.
Okay.
The play itself, the screenplay may be a little bit longer, maybe 100 minutes, 115 at the most. So not quite 2 hours. I kept it under 2 hours.
Okay. What did you tackle after your novel?
Let's see. Well, I wrote a short story for a contest, a little contest.
Yeah.
And then I wrote some plays, actually. I wrote short plays which were produced in Atlanta, Georgia, for a group, nonprofit called Southeastern Arts, Media, and Education, which was very big at the time. I think this is back in the 80s. And they were produced, one of them was produced there, which was... I guess my themes are similar in a way, but this one was back at the turn of the century, the 19th century and 20th century, and it occurs in New Orleans, and it has to do with a lesbian werewolf who works in a house of prostitution, a very upscale house of prostitution in New Orleans, and how she gets found out because she's killing the customers.
The ones that don't pay her, or what?
Well, she can't help herself. My friend Donna Sterna just wrote a great song called "Vampires Can't Help Themselves," and I think it's true of werewolves too. In a way, can't really help herself.
So that sounds like a kind of fun
it's
story.
very fun, and it's fun to take on New Orleans a little bit. Of course, it's changed so much now.
Yeah.
But during that time, it was very much. It has a lot of voodoo in it, and that sort of thing.
What about your poetry? Because you say that, like, screenwriting is like poetry, but what about your actual poetry when you start out doing that? When did you start writing poetry?
I started writing poetry almost immediately after I finished the novel.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I did not waste any time, because I had always had a poet's heart, I think, and which made policing very difficult.
That's always sort of confused me. You know, when I was a kid in school, they used to, especially when I was a kid in England, they used to like beat it into us. You know, you're going to memorize this poem, and we're going to beat it with the cane. You know, so that's not so far from the truth either. So it was many years before I really developed an appreciation of poetry. So what was there that inside you made you say, I want to write a poem?
I think poets in general are highly sensitive people, essentially HSP, highly sensitive people, and I think that the things they see, the things they hear, the things they perceive are very. They take them in very deeply, and so there is only one way to deal with that other than becoming an addict or drinking or whatever, and that is to write it down, to make it into something else, to create something with it. And poetry was really natural for me. I love words, I love rhyme, I love singing song, I love singing and song and both, and So it became very natural for me. Now I'm a very kind of specific poet in that I'm a storytelling poet. Really, mine are very often narrative poems. Every once in a while I'll come up with a little lyrical poem, but mostly they're narratives, and they're about my life. A lot of them are very memoir type based, and my partner Lee Wilkerson is a true poet, what I call a true poet, who really captures a single moment. I capture whole huge things that happen. So I would say I'm a bard of poetry, you know, and so actually playwriting and that kind of poetry go hand in hand in a lot of ways, you know, it's because I'm telling the news of the day.
Sure, you're the Beowulf type of poet.
Yeah, and really going from village to village telling the news of the day. Here's what's happening now. I attend the Peace Open Mic that Omni does, and it's great because you're challenged to write some kind of poem, present tense poem about what's going on in the world.
Kind of the leader of that for a while, or
not Omni's. That is Donna and Kelly, Still on the Hill. They host that. I host How, which is a women's open mic poetry reading.
Okay.
Which is going to be a little different in March. So anybody who's watching this in March, on the 15th, it will be at the Goddess Space, and it is open to both men and women reading. And usually it's only women reading. Everyone can come listen, but this time we're inviting the guys to read about strong women in their lives.
Okay. What about, have there been any particular poets that have inspired you, not consciously, not so you go, I want to imitate that poet, but are there any poets that you said, man, this person's just great? Have there been any inspirations for you?
Yes, one is one of my very favorites and who really inspires me is Naomi Shihab Nye. I don't know if you know her. She does a lot of children's poems and poetry work as well as her own. And she's Arab American. She's a beautiful poet and a beautiful human being.
I've interviewed people who talked about her.
Oh, she's just great. And then Walt Whitman is one of my favorites, and so is Frost. As hard-bitten as he was in a way, he wrote incredible poetry, and also he kept his language fairly simple. I love that he was a poet for the people, and Whitman too. I mean, I really like those ideas. Mary Oliver, who writes the most beautiful nature poetry I think that may be out there, and Sharon Olds, who deals with that kind of confessional poetry, and so those are a little handful. But I read any new poet, and have studied the old ones, but I can't reel them off in my head. There's the guy who is the poet who wrote the beautiful clothesline poem that has the angels, that the clothes become angels. That is one of my favorite poems of all times.
What was it like for you the first time you performed in public as a poet?
Well, you know, I was a little shaky. I was a little nervous, but it was at a cafe, which was fairly crowded. I will say that. And I was nervous, but I got that preacher blood. You know, there is that in you, and I do think that it does affect you. Yeah. That once I got started, I was in my prime. I was happy. I was just, you know, I was I found I was a fish in the right pond. Truly.
Tell me about your memoir writing.
Memoir is difficult. I do more memoir writing through poetry than anything else.
Really? Okay.
And I actually, when I was in South Africa, created a book.
Because you were the North Carolina poet in residence to South Africa in 2001.
Yes.
Yes.
And when I went down there, I was at a fine arts press. And he didn't want to just do my words. He wanted me to draw pictures. Well, I kept saying to him, I am not a visual artist. I am not a visual artist. This is the most difficult thing I did. And I thought, you know, I was just going to go down there and get experiences and write. But truth is, we worked from 9 to 9 every day.
Wow.
Yes. And we worked. I did things. I made up things. I drew my own leg. That was like one part of it. I just put my leg up on the table and sketched it. You know, it's a very primitive artwork, but it has been in an art show in Atlanta, so that was pretty cool. And then he had me handwrite all of the poems that go with it next to it. So that was a really deep, meaningful, and excruciating event in my life in South Africa. But I learned more about art and the love of it, and his name is Malcolm Christian. He runs a place called Caversham Press, he and his wife Roz, and they are remarkable people. They've been to the States to visit and visited me, and we formed a very lasting friendship.
How long were you there in South Africa?
1 month. We worked for 3 weeks on the art pieces, and then we printed, and then we had a week to travel, and so I went to a great place there.
So how were you chosen?
You applied like any other North Carolina grant. You sent in a bunch of your poems, and you had to fill out all this paperwork, your bio, blah blah blah. But the interesting thing and the different thing, and the reason I think I got this was because it was the people in South Africa who picked.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
That's Johannesburg calling.
I wish it was probably Malcolm. I'll have to tell him. He'll actually look online and find this.
So, what does the future hold for you?
Well, I hope it holds more screenplay writing. I found that I loved it. It really appeals to me. The form appeals to me, how strict you have to be with the form, and also the visual nature of it. I'm a very visual person. I tend to see stories unfold in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that really appeals to me as well. I have a screenplay that I really want to do next. It's already in process. I'm working on the characterization, and it's much more character-driven. This is a fairly plot-driven story. The next one will be character-driven. And but they all have, because I am a preacher at heart, message, you know what I'm saying?
So have you actually had a practice reading of your play yet?
Yes, we have read through it. We had a group come to my house, so it was about 12, so there was a lot of taking extra parts and stuff, and we did read through just to see if we could make it into a stage reading. We didn't know until we had read it.
Right.
And so, and at that point we decided we could, but it would take work. We had to figure out how could we make it work and change those visuals into a storyteller part.
So what was it like? What was it like to actually see your words come alive like that, to hear people read them?
Well, it was a little unnerving to do the screenplay because, it was stilted.
Right.
It was difficult, and people read cold. They hadn't read the screenplay, so it was like you're waiting for the next person to find their part. It was very unnerving. But now, when I did the play, and it was produced in Atlanta, and I went to the theater nights, it was an incredible experience, probably the most incredible experience of your life, to build something on a piece of paper, work on it, and then see live people doing the thing. And you're just, you built something like a piece of art that's living, and that is it's a great feeling. That was really wonderful.
I read an interview with Edward Albee, and someone said, you have to go see the first performance of this play, and it was in Berlin, and he couldn't speak a word of German, but he still flew to Germany to see An American Dream put on, but it was, even though he didn't understand a word, he said it was still
yeah, absolutely. It's a thrilling moment in your life.
So, well, and so I want to thank you very much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for interviewing me. It's been great.
It was great fun, and I hope everybody enjoys your play.
Me too.
I'm sure they will. So I want to thank you all for watching this week, and we'll see you next week.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
In these turbulent times, let us not erode the liberties our country was built on.
Let it shine.
Hello, I'm Bill Reagan, and you're watching Fayetteville Public Television.
Bag Lady. When I'm old, I'll wear moonflower hats and socks that don't match. I'll wear long underwear with orange and green stripes and nothing on underneath. I'll trade in my Buick sedan for a shopping cart with souped-up wheels and go drag racing down every street in town. I'll leave my old Tupperware life sealed and rotting in the refrigerator. I'll leave behind all those garden party gals with their white kid gloves and primly crossed legs. I'll forget every nice girl thought I ever had. When I'm old, I'll say to hell with taxes, deodorant, and Revlon eyes. I'll mooch quarters from college boys and pinch them on the ass. I'll order in front of all the best restaurants, panhandling women and men who give me money because they pity me my place in the open beneath the stars, even as they plot suicide in the stranglehold of their mortgaged lives. Friday nights I'll go dumpster hopping, then hang out with the old guys drinking rot gut beneath the bridge. I'll be the queen of their cardboard shanties till the booze is gone. Then I'll leave them crying alone like all the women of their dreams who drove their hearts into the ground. In the mornings I'll stake my claim on a park bench beneath the trees. I'll commune with pigeons and squirrels and all the oddball regulars who know me by name. Along about noon, I'll feel a twinge of sadness as I ruminate on the children I never had. I'll think about all the men I loved and abandoned. I could never find one who could get his arms around the idea of me. I could never be anybody's anything if it meant carving off a piece of myself and serving it up on a plate. Call me street pilgrim, boxcar babe, bag lady if you must. But I am a free spirit jettisoned into that great unknown. And when it's my time to go, I'll lay down in the leaves and gaze up at the sky. I'll know I made a go of it and never sold myself so I could rot slow on a couch in some old folks' home. I'll know right up to the end I was undeniably, uncompromisingly, excruciatingly me. They'll find me stretched out with a smile, and it won't matter what they do with these old bones. It won't matter if they shake their heads and feel sorry. I'll be long gone on that journey toward the sun, toward that bright light of my deliverance.
For a number of years now, Joan and I have sung and participated in some trainings for volunteers in Kansas City who work with CASA, which are a group of people who work with families and children from households where abuse has occurred, usually to the children, and they help them through the court system, which you may or may not know is really baffling and hard and difficult. And so we have a set of music we call it our abuse set, and this is one of those songs, and I know, hard to set it sounds so trite. I'm sorry. This song is a really wonderful song that was written by Fred Small. It is about the person who stays with you. If you've been through abuse as a child or as an adult, there's a piece of you that needs to come back, that needs to be healed. And that piece of you can be very cruel. And to stay with you during that time period can be very difficult, but that constancy is so important. The song is called I Will Stand Fast, and I think all of us, this affects all of us. It's not a small thing. And so we dedicate this to the people who have suffered the abuse and the people who survived it and were with them. Vehicle
brains and signed his name with a piece of wood. Dropped through, sand it down again. Yeah, this old man is my old friend. This old man, he drives cars, old red Fords with black old tires, and a pickup truck. Lots of luck, will it start again? Yeah, this old man is my old friend. This old man, he loves kids. He thinks pumpkin is really his. With a game of cards, staring hard, looking down his nose. There's lots of things that this man knows. Tried to love her, but she wouldn't be true. Breaks a man's heart right in two. The day she left him, the sky turned gray. But he got up and worked the very same day. Oh, this old man, he has pain. He rolls it over inside his brain. But the memories come time and time again. Yeah, this old man is my old friend. This old man, he works hard all day long till he gets tired, but he never stops thinking months what he's gonna do, and he keeps on thinking till he gets through. This old man, he builds trains and signs his name with a piece of wood. Drop it through, sand it down again. Yeah, this old man is my old friend. Yeah, this old man is my old friend.
To support my music habit, I do inspections on federally subsidized housing for low-income families. And most of the time, when I'm working, if there are any 3 or 4-year-old kids in the house, there's almost always one that will want to follow me around and check out what I'm doing. Usually the kid wants to just play junior inspector. Sometimes they're just curious. Sometimes they want to be defender of the household and make sure that I'm not intruding too much on their lives. But once in a while there's a kid that just wants to talk. Just talk and talk and talk. And do you know that kid? Or were you that kid? Or are you still that kid? I don't know how many, maybe 3 summers ago, I was working in a public housing development near downtown Kansas City, and I met a little girl and her doll who just wanted to talk all day. They kind of romped around in my dreams for a couple of months until they made their way into this song.
Smile.
In these turbulent times, let us not erode the liberties our country was built on.
Let it shine.
Politics in general and jobs that don't pay enough, 40-hour work weeks, books full of boring stuff, schools that should teach but kids don't learn a thing. These are a few of my least favorite things. Healthcare that won't heal and how people treat the earth, paying tolls and taxes, disbelief in self-worth, bitter cold winters that cut into spring. These are a few of my least favorite things. Religions that claim they're true, don't get me started. Standards that double and people cold-hearted. Judgment and bias when freedom don't ring. These are a few of my least favorite things. All the lying, all the killing. When I'm depressed and sad, I add that to all of my least favorite things, and then I feel really bad. Feel like Julie Andrews or something.